Good to see you.
All right, the hottest race in the country right now is the Congressional District 13 special election to succeed Bill Young. We have David Jolly, Republican, running a two-way race. You, Kathleen Peters, state rep, and Mark Bircher, a distinguished veteran. What makes you the best choice?
Well, listen, I got into this race because I believe with humility that I'm the most qualified to step in on day one and be effective for the people of Pinellas County.
Why?
I had the opportunity to work for 20 years on behalf of the people of this county and to do so alongside our late Congressman Bill Young. And that's important because the job of a United States Congressman for the 13th District is to be effective for the people of the 13th District. I had the opportunity to learn from him on how to impact this community in a lot of special ways, from veterans to infrastructure to the beaches to serving the community to seniors. I also learned from him the ability to work together with all parties. Listen, Mr. Young was a great man. He's left us a great legacy. Nobody's going to be able to replace Mr. Young. The voters in this race have an opportunity, though, to elect somebody that's most qualified to step in.
But you didn't work for him for 20 years.
I served with him in 20 years in a variety of different capacities, or perhaps 18 or 19. So basically, my first job out of college, my first real job was with him. And from that day until the day that he passed, I was with him.
But where I'm going with this is obviously that you were most recently a federal lobbyist. We're going to be hearing that all the time from your opponents.
Sure.
And aren't lobbyists a big part of the problem in Washington? Why would people want to elect a federal lobbyist?
Well, listen, we're going to talk about that every step of the way. So in some areas I have to correct the record. I have several businesses. I have a business here in Pinellas County. I work here in Pinellas County in finance, in nonprofit management. I do a fair amount of consulting. And for a number of clients, yes, I am required to register as a federal lobbyist. That is, at this point, maybe 10% of what I do. But I'm proud of my record here. And let's talk about that. What does that mean? That means that when Pinellas County organizations have tried to interface with the federal government, I've been able to assist them. I'm proud of a few things. We have been able to secure money for law enforcement to go after sex offenders. We've been able to bring jobs to Pinellas County as a result of investments in the high-tech community here.
When you say we, you're talking about Bill Young.
No, you're asking questions about my private practice now. I'm talking about in my private practice. Right. I've worked with organizations to bring funding to law enforcement to go after sex offenders. I've worked with biomedical research labs to advance research for wounded warriors, medical research for wounded warriors with amputations. I've been able to work with small companies here as well as large companies here to bring jobs here.
Yeah. Let's talk about residency, because there's this notion that you're an outsider and you're
I'd love to talk about that. I'd love to talk about that.
Especially if you go up against Alex Sink.
Sure, I'd love to talk about that.
Okay.
So I understand what has been said about me by some of my opponents in the Republican primary. I consider them friends. You all have covered politics for a long time. You know that a race like this causes people to say some pretty bizarre things. I was born here in Dunedin. I live in Indian Shores. I chair the Indian Shores Zoning Committee right now. I'm a fourth-generation Pinellas resident. My grandfather worked construction for the old J.B. Hunt Construction Company. Another family member ran a grocery down by Morton Plant Hospital. My father was a minister at Calvary Baptist Church. When I graduated from college, I'd never been north of Tennessee. Again, my opponents like to say some pretty crazy things. That's not what this race is about. I'm a Pinellas County guy. I'm a Bill Young Republican. I know what it means to work for the people of this county.
So let me ask you, then what is the biggest pressing issue in Pinellas County? And I realize that you're going to be in Washington, but this race may come down to who knows and understands the needs of Pinellas County better.
You know what's interesting about that, Al? So the national parties are going to make this a national race.
Right.
And in many ways it is. We have two very important local issues. And this goes to the effectiveness that a member of Congress can bring. We have a flood insurance crisis. We have a flood insurance crisis that's only going to get worse if Congress and the President don't step in and fix it. We also, as a result of Mr. Young's legacy, have a significant job base here that's related to the Department of Defense and our military. We need to elect somebody that can address the flood insurance issue. We need to elect somebody that knows how to keep these businesses and these jobs here in Pinellas County. And then we also need to elect somebody who understands Bill Young's legacy, what he did for veterans, what he did for seniors. And yes, along the way, somebody that's going to vote against Obamacare, because that's the difference in this general election.
Let's get to that. Are you going to go up there and fight to repeal Obamacare?
I would, yes. And if you saw just in the last day, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, suggested that every one of the Democratic candidates in this race should be able to run on Obamacare. I welcome that. I want this race to be about Obamacare because what I've said recently is the President, Nancy Pelosi, got us into this Obamacare mess. It is nonsense to suggest that Obama, Pelosi, and Alex Sink are going to get us out of it.
So but repealing Obamacare is pretty strong position. I mean, what about those people that are suddenly getting insurance and yes, it's been a debacle to roll out, but there are a lot of people that are grateful and feeling like their lives are virtually saved.
So let's be realistic. We don't have the votes to repeal Obamacare today. We would have to win a majority of people that would believe that's the case. I do believe we have a majority of people, Republicans and Democrats now, who have said this has been a complete and utter failure. It's been a mess. And I think reasonable people can agree it's time to at least delay its implementation. This has been a complete mess.
What would you replace it with, though? Because things like kids being on their parents until they're 26, no limits on the amount of insurance, the portability. A lot of people say those are all good things.
They are good things, but I think there are private market solutions to this. This is what is fascinating about Washington. Washington has a way of defining the problem for us, and then they go about fixing it, right? Mm-hmm. I understand there have been significant issues in our healthcare industry. We all know that. Did we really have a crisis that the President tried to define for us, and then he killed a fly with a hammer? I don't think so.
You don't think health insurance was a crisis in the country?
I don't think it was a crisis. It is something that has to be addressed. So let's talk about provisions like portability, covering people to 26 years old, those things. Mm-hmm. Those options are available, were available in the private sector. You simply had to pay for them, right? I prefer a free market where I get to decide if I'm going to pay for that. What the President did was he now required this of insurers, drove up insurance prices for everybody. Everybody. Listen, the people I talked to in this county, there was a woman I spoke to yesterday who runs a small business here in the county. They're renewing their employee plans early to avoid the impact of Obamacare. I spoke to another woman whose premium first tripled and then got canceled. The President should have taken the same Hippocratic oath doctors take. First, do no harm.
Let's shift gears. The House Republican budget, your boss Bill Young voted for it. Would you have voted for it?
Well, it depends on which budget vote you're talking about.
The Ryan budget for several years,
budget.
yeah.
So, listen, I think there was a lot of good in the Ryan budget. The Ryan budget lacked a lot of details. The federal budget process, it's easy to put out a blueprint, which essentially was what the Ryan plan was.
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful on the Ryan budget for a couple reasons. Entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, we know what that means to the community here. I have said from the very beginning, we have to protect the promises that have been made to everybody.
But is that, then you're saying no, you would have voted against it?
Against the Ryan plan?
Yeah.
I would have to examine the details of Ryan plan more often.
You're a federal lobbyist. You worked for Bill Young.
Right.
It was the basis of the last presidential election.
Right.
You kind of should know the Ryan plan.
There was very little in the Ryan plan. I mean, if you've read the Ryan plan,
here's tax cuts and entitlement cuts.
It said we're going to slow the growth. We're going to slow the growth of these entitlement programs. Yes, I agree with slowing the growth of these entitlement programs. However, what we have to do is secure the promises we've made. Listen, I'm a fiscal conservative, right? But I also believe being a fiscal conservative means taking responsibility. The government has made promises to people, to the two of you and to me as well, upon which we have made financial plans. I have made a financial plan based upon a promise the government made to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not too young for the government to still continue honoring that promise.
Another hot button issue, immigration reform, not clear it's going to go anywhere, but would you have supported a pathway for citizenship? That seems to be the main sticking point.
I think we have to be careful saying a pathway to citizenship, right? First, we begin with enforcing our current laws.
Would you have supported the plan that the Senate came up with, the Marco Rubio plan?
On its face, no. I respect Marco Rubio for putting a lot of his political career on the line and saying we're going to tackle this issue. This is a hard issue, right? This is a very hard issue. We have 11 million people here illegally. Because we simply changed the name to undocumented instead of illegal doesn't make it right. Mm-hmm. The fact is we have people here legally. We have to honor that. I think the issue comes down in a lot of ways to the taxpayer issue, right? We are a loving and caring nation. We welcome people here, and we should welcome people here. The issue is it has to be done legally and without causing undue expense to taxpayers.
All right, we're almost out of time. I can ask you one last question. Is Alex Sink carpetbagging?
Listen, the people of Pinellas County did not ask Alex Sink to move here and run for Congress. The Democratic National Committee, Nancy Pelosi, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they asked her to move here. That's an important substantive matter for one reason. If she's elected, she's going to be loyal to the Democratic National Committee in Washington, D.C., not to the people of Pinellas County.
All right, David, thank you so much. We've run out of time. Good talking, and come back again if you would.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it.
Coming up, we're going to sit down with our friends at Politico.